What's good, everyone? Uncle Phil here. Now, I don't normally go live as much as I should, but today, today, ladies and gentlemen, this is for educational purposes. Yeah. So, come on in. Reach one, teach one, y'all. So, before I get started, I just want to say like, share, and subscribe. I greatly appreciate people for tuning in. And I'm not going to waste too much of your time because I want to read over this, leave something on your mind, and hopefully this will help you or anyone who's dealing with court cases. Because I know court cases can throw a monkey wrench in all of our lives. So I'm not an attorney. No, let me put this down. I'm not an attorney. I'm just an individual. I like to follow the money. Okay. So on the subject of court cases, this is like heavy. So of course, in any court case, who's the plaintiff? In the case, in a case style, normally the state is the plaintiff and you end up being the defendant. So whatever state you're in, if you catch charges, a traffic infraction or whatever, charges are being brought against you as the defendant. All right. Now, mind you, that defendant really isn't you. That defendant is an entity with your likeness. It's basically your estate, your trust, right? So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. So who is the plaintiff? In a case style, state versus you, the state is the plaintiff. The prosecution is acting on behalf of the state and theoretically the people, right? Number two, who benefits in a criminal case? Here's where shit really gets heavy, y'all. Prosecutors, their office is funded by the state, and convictions can bring prestige, career advancement, and sometimes increased budgets. Judges and court staff, salaries are paid from the state or county tax revenues. Courts also receive fees, fines, and surcharges from cases. So think about this. Every single solitary case that comes into that courtroom, your judge, your prosecutors, even the clerk of courts are benefiting from that. Also, keep in mind, that is what you consider conflict of interest. They're not even supposed to be doing that. But anyway, let me continue. Next, state treasury. If fines, court costs, or restitutions are imposed, the money often flows into the state or the county's accounts. Private contractors, probation services, monitoring devices, private prisons, treatment centers, and towing storage companies, in your case with vehicles, often profit directly from criminal cases. Number three, the defendant's estate angle. This is where law and finances meet. Courts treat you as a defendant, but legally, your name in all caps often represents a legal entity, the estate or trust, which is tied to your birth certificate and social security account. When charges are brought, the case generates bonds. I had to I had to ask a judge for this, and the judge just froze. The case generates bonds, which is called appearance bonds, performance bonds, bid bonds, BID bonds. These can be monetized and traded through the court's financial system, usually under UCC and the Treasury rules. This means there's a financial incentive behind cases. Each case creates revenue streams via bonds, fines, and court costs. Number 4, bottom line. Everyone inside that courtroom, judges, prosecutors, clerks, bailiff, probation officer, is ultimately funded by the state taxpayer dollars, the revenue generated from your case, which is fines, fees, bonds, restitution. So the benefit flows to the state's treasury through fines and fees. The court system and staff though budget and salaries, the court system and staff through budget and salaries, the associated industries, probation, prisons, towing, treatment centers. So let's see, how exactly are the bonds created in your court case and cases are monetized and who gets a cut? All right, so let's walk through it step by step. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to break this down. How a criminal case creates financial instruments, better known as bonds, and where the money flows. So step number 1, case initiation. When charges are filed, the state versus you, the court opens a case file. That case file acts like a financial account, often tied to your name in all capital letters, the estate legal person. So whenever you see your name in all caps, sometimes they try to play with your level of intelligence. When you see your all caps name, that is the estate and the legal person. Number 2, bonds are created. Courts typically create several types of bonds, even if you don't see them. And ain't that sneaky? The appearance bond, which ensures you will show up to court. Performance bonds ensures you will comply with the judgment or sentence. Bid bonds guarantees that the contract, which is the case, will be carried out. These are all commercial bonds operating under the UCC principles. Number 3, bonds are monetized. These bonds are backed by your birth certificate, estate account, and is the collateral created when you were registered at birth. The clerk of court signs as the holder of office, making the bonds negotiable instruments. They are then sent through the Treasury and often up to the U.S. Treasury. Step 4, bonds are traded. Once logged, the bonds can be bundled into securities. Ain't that something? Securities, like mortgages and auto loans and personal loans. Let's continue. And traded as part of a municipal or state investment portfolios. The CUSIP system, Committee on Uniform Securities Identification Procedures, assigns tracking numbers to these instruments. Investors buy into these revenue streams, just like mortgages or student loans. Step number 5, revenue distribution. Here's who's benefiting, right? Court system gets funded via court costs, fees, fines, and surcharges. Prosecutors, judges indirectly benefit from budget increases tied to conviction rates and cases, though put. State Treasury receives money from the monetized bonds and fines. The U.S. Treasury, Federal Reserve, may hold or trade securities at a higher level. Private entities, prisons, probation services, treatment centers, monitoring companies, even towing companies can profit from the judgment. Step number 6, defendant's estate as collateral. Since the legal fiction, which is you, is considered an estate trust, your signature and presence serves as the energy slash value backing the bonds. That's why every signature in court is so heavily emphasized. It's the act that charges the account. Let me say that again. It is the act that charges the account. So in plain words, your court case is not just about justice, it's also a financial transaction. Every case creates bonds. Bonds are traded. Revenue flows back into the court system, the state, and the financial markets. Boy. So let's continue, right? Conflict of interest. Because personally, I felt like, well, shoot, if they're monetizing off of my estate, but I can't monetize off of it, that's a problem. Like, how can you, it's like, how can you bring forth a case against me and then you're a party to the case? It's like, you don't intend for me to win. Okay, let's continue, right? So I'm gonna break this down even further. The conflict of interest. The court is supposed to be an impartial forum of justice. But if judges, prosecutors, clerks, and even private contractors all benefit financially from the existence of cases, there's a built-in incentive to prosecute, convict, and not necessarily seek truth or justice. This is the definition of a conflict of interest, when decision makers have a personal or institutional gain at stake. Violations, right? Pay very close attention to it. Due process violations, 5th and the 14th Amendment. You're supposed to have a fair, impartial trial. If the court profits from your conviction, impartiality is compromised. Judicial canons of ethics. Judges must avoid appearance of impropriety. Financial interest in case outcomes violates this. The separation of powers issues. Courts are acting partly as administrative financial agents, not purely as judicial bodies. Here's a big one. Potential RICO angle. If the court, state, and private entities run cases as revenue schemes, it begins to look like racketeering. All right. That part messed me up. Next, the core problem, right? Instead of justice first, the system becomes every case is revenue. The defendant is the collateral. That's why you see so many low-level cases like traffic, probation violations, fines, even child support. Churn through. They are steady income streams. So, that's heavy. That's heavy, y'all. Like, you telling me this is why you have a lot of court cases that really don't get its due justice. And a lot of people are very, very frustrated about that. But you have to keep in mind, this is, wow, they will monetize off of your case and they will take away from your estate. Like, they were, okay. So how to frame arguments in court filings. If you want to challenge your case based on conflict of interest and financial gain, you could raise due process violations. Fifth and the 14th Amendments argue that the courts cannot be impartial because it directly benefits financially from your case. Case law, Toomey versus Ohio, 273 U.S. 510, 1927. Supreme Court held it violates due process when a judge has a direct, personal, substantial financial interest in convicting a defendant. Filing tool, motion to dismiss for lack of impartial tribunal or motion to challenge jurisdiction for conflict of interest. Shout out to the one person that is still in this live, because the 5 other people, they missed that. They're about to miss this. Filing to motion to dismiss for lack of impartial tribunal or motion to challenge jurisdiction for conflict of interest. B, judicial canons of ethics. As I stated before, judges must avoid even the appearance of impropriety. You could cite Canon 2 of the ABA Model Code of Judicial Conduct, adopted in most states. A judge shall avoid impropriety and the appearance of impropriety in all of the judge's activities. The filing tool is a judicial notice and affidavit of conflict, which forces the court to answer whether they profit or not. Ooh, y'all lucky I like y'all. Y'all lucky Uncle Phil loves y'all. Because I'm not a gatekeeper of information. When I come across information that I'm studying, I'm just so compelled to share it with someone else because it could help in their situations. Again, I'm not an attorney. I'm just a student in the game. So C, here's the interesting part on C. RICO, Racketeering, Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organization Act, 18 U.S.C. subsection 1961 to 1968. If you can show the pattern, courts, states, and private contractors, probations, prisons, towing benefit financially from convictions, it resembles a racketeering enterprise. Filing tool, notice of RICO violations and demand for dismissal. Even if it doesn't get you out, it preserves your record for appeal. D, contract law, UCC angle. You could argue the case is treated as a commercial transaction with you as the collateral. That makes it a conflict of interest because the state is acting as both plaintiff and beneficiary of the contract. The filing tool you'll need to use is the affidavit of status and notice of beneficial interest conflict. Number 2, historical and financial proof trail. If you need to back this up with evidence, Toomey, T-U-M-E-Y versus Ohio, 1927. Due process violated if judge profits from fines. Ward versus Monroeville, 409 U.S. 57, 1972, states unconstitutional if judge's financial interest is tied to a city revenue from cases. State court administrative offices publish budgets showing fines and fees are a revenue stream. GAO reports. The U.S. Government Accountability Office shows bonds, securities are created in court systems. The CUSIF numbers trace how bonds get securitized. Now, here's the strategy. You don't have to prove the whole scheme in one motion. You don't. Instead, put the court on notice of conflict of interest. Force them to admit or deny whether your case generates revenue. Preserve the record for appeal on due process grounds. And that's where Uncle Phil's gonna stop at. That's where Uncle Phil's gonna stop at. Because I'm not even gonna front. I got some court cases, some that's some that's old, and one in particular that is still existing. But I say that to, to share many, with many of you. I know everyone's probably having a busy, Saturday and whatnot. Go ahead and do your thing. In my case, I'm staying home because I need to study. And I know probably many of you are wondering, well, why are you studying like this? Because when you hate the court system as much as I do, and you feel there's just unfair justice, it's just, things are just too extreme as a form of quote unquote punishment. It pushes you, well, for me, it just pushed me to that point where I had to learn the rules. I had to learn the rules of the game. I had to learn the laws, their codes, their statutes. So when I see that they're violating, that puts me in a position where I can check them for their violations. Because of course, they don't have a problem checking us when we commit these commercial offenses, whether it's driving with a suspended license, which I'm about to break that shit up. I know a lot of people like to jump out there and say, oh, that's that sovereign citizen theory. And that's something else I want to throw out there too. That whole sovereign citizen, look, that's an oxymoron. If you don't know, stop using that, because that's stupid. That's very ignorant. You can only be one or the other. You can't be two. That's like saying, oh, I'm a man woman. If I was looking at you like, how can you be a man woman? It's like, can as a man, can you give birth to a child? No. Well, you're not a woman. You can only be a man. Gosh, you can't be the same thing. You can only be sovereign, which sovereigns are a part of the republic. You can be a citizen. And if you're a citizen, then that means you're a subject. You have an obligation in exchange for benefits that you have to follow. So no different than when you sign up for a driver's license. When you sign that contract and you are a citizen, you have an obligation to follow that contract to a T. And the first time you violate it, then you're penalized. So this is another reason why, because I was one of those individuals. I would be behind the wheel. I wouldn't, and there were times I didn't have a driver's license. I didn't. And, I always wondered, like, why do you need a driver's license to go from point A to point B? When if you turn over the back of your driver's license, you'll see something called Class C. And I always wondered, I was like, what the heck is Class C? What does that represent? And then when I realized Class C represented commercial, I was like, okay, so I'm using this license in a commercial capacity. And I was like, well, who paying me? Nobody's paying you to go from point A to point B. They tell, they have indoctrinated us into entering these contracts, not realizing that, hey, you're converting a natural right into a privilege that people have to pay for. It's like, why, if I want to travel in my private conveyance from my home to my mother's home, why is it I need a commercial driver's license? Like, and I get it. A lot of people will want to dig and just jump in there and say, well, you need a license to operate a vehicle. I was like, why do I need the state's permission? Why do I need the state's permission to travel from point A to point B in my private conveyance? Why do I have to register my vehicle with the state, and which grants the state at any given time to tow my vehicle and crush it, auction it off, and to no benefit to me or you for that matter? I'm like, you register your car with the state, you're basically giving ownership to the state. That's why you got a lot of impound vehicles out there. Instead of people registering their vehicles to their state, they just, they do as they are told. And I totally agree, because I was one of those individuals. I was just like, yeah, I registered my car and had a driver's license. But then when you realize how the U.S. entity converts a natural right of an individual, of a man or a woman, how they convert a natural right into a privilege, and then they make you pay for it, is wild to me. It's like they manipulate you into entering a contract, that they take that contract and they monetize that contract, because you have given that contract life by applying your John or Joan Hancock to it. So it's like, how is it? And this made me mad. It was like, how is it that you take a contract, a contractual agreement, and then you're able to monetize off of it, but I can't even get not even 1 red cent off of it? I can't benefit from it? Like, wow. And other investors, a lot of foreign investors, you have to keep into account. They play a part in making money off of these investments. That's why you have foreign investors. Yeah, they monetizing off of that. But, getting back to my point, don't want to wander off too much. There were times that I was traveling from point A to point B, and, in my private conveyance, I did not have a driver's license at all. I didn't. And which it makes sense, because why do you need the state permission to travel? Oh, to show that you're competent? I was like, shoot, you got people out here with driver's license, they still not competent. Fuck. It's all about contractual agreement. Living in this country, I've learned that everything that moves it generates revenue. It's commercialized. So it's a transactional society that we live in. It's a transactional society that we live in. And that's wild. That is really wild, y'all. So, I'm totally against, I'm against having driver's license. I personally feel you don't need a commercial license to travel in your private conveyance. Just like you really don't need the state's permission to get married. They just want that contract right there in front of them because that's something else that they can convert into a bond, and they can securitize that and throw that into a pool of mortgages, auto loans, personal loans, student loans, those things that they have a tendency of monetizing off of. They sell these things in a market where other investors can put their hands on, and they can monetize it, make money off of it. But why can't you make money off of it? Especially if it's pertaining and it's relating to you and your name is on that contract. Why is it everyone else, it's like, why is it everyone else can monetize off of it and you can't? Hey, sit down. And my wife popped up in here. Y'all chill out. Just 'cause mama here don't mean you act up. Sit down. So, as I'm sorry about that. As I stated before, why do we as people need the permission of the state to get married, to travel from point A to point B? And if they want us to have these contracts, right, they want to hold us, obligated to fulfilling these contracts. Why is it that each and every person that has signed a contract, why is it they can't benefit from it? It's part of their estate. Your signature gives every contract value. That's why you would see like car commercials where like Volvo, they used to say sign and drive. Why you think they say sign and drive? Because of the contract. They understand, especially in in commercial law. It clearly states in commercial law that the only way you can give life to a contract is by applying your Joan or John Hancock. It's just like putting the battery into a back of a rabbit. The rabbit's not moving unless you put something that is going to generate some sort of energy to it. And our bodies, our signature, even in court, generates what? Energy, which gives life to every single contract that you sign. But again, how in the heck can they benefit from it, monetize it, generate revenue and income, and then they still expect you to do 12 years of probation? What? I was like, y'all just sat up here and held me, incarcerated me for 20 days for failure to appear. Failure to appear. That's just how pissed they get with you. Failure to appear, and they will make you sit. I had a court case where I didn't appear, I didn't appear in court. I didn't. I gave them notice, but I didn't follow up behind it. That's where I messed up at. I gave notice. I didn't know what to do next to, put that nail in the coffin. But these fools, for failure to appear, they didn't give me a bond. They wanted me to sit. And you know what happened during that time that I was sitting? They were monetizing each day that I sat in that raggedy, nasty jail with jailers and and guards that was just, they would treat you like you a scum. And then you see them outside and they're just, hi, how you doing? Fuck out of my face. Go play with your mama. Don't play with me. And I just felt like that was wrong, man. Like, I can see if I was an individual that actually went out there and I took someone's life, you know, I infringed on someone's life, liberty, in pursuit of happiness, I can see them holding me for actually doing a heinous crime against someone else. But you're talking about traffic infractions, and they hold you. They held me. They ain't give me no bond. I was like, oh, y'all don't like me, huh? Okay. And this is why I'm doing my self-study. And I'm sharing this information, you know, with many of you all. I apologize if this live just went a little bit too long, but you can always, when I end it, you can always come back, play it, listen to it, take your notes, because the more you know, the better off you'll be. Because the judges, prosecutors, these bogus government officials, it's like if you don't learn the rules of the game, they're not going to tell you. They're just going to railroad you. That's it. Sometimes people get tired of being railroaded and taken advantage of. It's like, damn. After doing 20 days in the county, I figured that I'll be good. I wouldn't need no daggone probation. These maggots, they put Uncle Phil on probation. Oh, boy. And under duress, I just, I agreed with it because I wanted to get out. They weren't going to hold me there any longer. So they was making me sick, boy. The food that's being prepared, man, look, that's slop. That is disgusting. I wouldn't even feed my dogs that. But, they don't care. They don't care. They treat you however they choose to. And is that a constitutional violation? It sure is. And it's a lot of them. 'Tis the reason why I'm just working on my case. When I get done with this county, they're not going to like me. They're not going to like Uncle Phil at all. But again, like I said, if you learn the rules of the game, that will make you a better player. They will get you out of the courtroom so fast because they don't want you putting out the information and asking certain questions, because they know you will end up backing a judge into a corner to where he or she will be forced to either answer the question truthfully or blatantly tell you a lie, knowing that you already know what the answer is. So again, keep in mind, as I stated before, with your court case, follow the money. Follow the money, people. When you follow the money and you find out, like, all judges, yes, all judges, there's not some, no, it's all judges profit from each case. So if a judge has a courtroom full of people that are wanting to pay for a traffic infraction, with Federal Reserve notes, which that's another conversation for another day that I will be touching on. But imagine how much money, just racketeering, that these courts are doing. Yeah, their courts committing conflict of interest. You have judges and prosecutors who are bringing a charge against you as the defendant. But as I stated before, how can a judge and a prosecutor representing on behalf of the state, How is it that they can represent the state and then have a financial interest in the case as well? Like, you can't do that. Like, on God, like, for real, you cannot do that. You know what? I still got time. I'm going to read you a few things. Hold on. Let me read you a few things, right? I'm going to shake y'all up a little bit. Do me a favor. Like, share, and subscribe. Tell a friend to come on in, right? So, hear me out. All right. Here's a few violations, right, that the judge that I'm butting heads with. Here's a few of their violations just off top. Violation of U.S. Constitution Article 3, subsection 1, illegal delegation of judicial power. You see, in Article 3, subsection 1 vests the federal judicial power exclusively in Article 3 courts. The order empowers prosecuting attorneys, probation officers, and other state actors to adjudicate and administer defendants' estate rights. Functions reserved to an impartial Article 3 tribunal. Such delegation of core judicial function to execute branch agents is per se unconstitutional. Number 2, violation of U.S. Constitution Article 3, subsection 2, denial of case or controversy. Article 3, subsection 2 extends federal judicial power to case and controversies arising under the Constitution. A defendant's challenge to his deprivation of property, due process rights, and emoluments constitute a judicial controversy. By declaring his affidavit of no effect, the state court refuses to adjudicate these federal claims, improperly shrinking its Article 3 duty. Supremacy Clause. State law must yield to federal constitution. The U.S. Constitution, Article 6, Clause 2 mandates that the Constitution shall be supreme law of the land and binds all state judges. Let me say that again. Shall be the supreme law of the land and binds all state judges. The state court may not nullify constitutional guarantees or allow state actors to bypass them. The state acting as both plaintiff and judge cannot override federal rights. Prohibition on state as party to its own case. Due process and separation of power principles forbid a sovereign from prosecuting itself. Here, the state of you-know-who, through its executive branch prosecutors, is a self-interest party in adjudicating the defendant's estates and liberties. The dual role confirms any claim, the dual role vitiates any claim of impartiality or lawful authority. Fifth Amendment violation. Lack of grand jury indictment. The Fifth Amendment provides that no person shall be held to answer unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury. This prosecution proceeds on an accusation number filed by the state prosecutor, not by a duly impaneled grand jury. Bypassing the grand jury requirement for an infamous offense violates fundamental due process protections incorporated against the state. All right, number 6. Hey, be quiet. My babies just be moving too much. Federal emoluments clause violations. Article 1, subsection 9, clause 8, and Article 1, subsection 6, clause 2 forbids federal office holders from accepting emoluments without congressional consent. Hold on, y'all. Baby, you just gonna stand there? You gonna? I'm live right now, baby. Give me a moment, baby. I'm working on something here. Just walk around that way. Why you gonna walk? I'm sorry. You gonna make me fight you? Why you gonna walk behind me? You know and don't be making all that noise. My wife just you're doing too much. Okay, because I'm not. I'm almost done. By claiming executor. Oh, let me go back. Article 1, subsection 9, clause 8, and Article 1, subsection 6, clause 2 forbids federal office holders from accepting emoluments without congressional consent. By claiming executor or administrator powers over defendant's estate, the state actors stand to collect fines, fees, or property proceeds. Unlawful emoluments under the federal emoluments clauses. Any payment of estate assets to the state or its officers must be declared void. 11th Amendment immunity. The 11th Amendment bars suits or prosecutions against the United States or its instrumentalities in state court without consent. Defendant's federal registrant status evidenced by his selective service number issued by the executive branch renders him an instrumentality of the federal government entitled to 11th Amendment immunity. The state lacks authority to prosecute or seize assets from a federally protected registrant. Yeah, so those are just one of many violations that a lot of, well, one particular judge is facing. Yeah, y'all. As I stated before, until you learn the rules of the game, the courts, the prosecutors, the clerk of courts, everyone in the courthouse damn near is benefiting off of your court case. Even down to a simple traffic infraction. The courts and judges are they got RICO charges on them. And most people don't even know it. So, as I stated before, I appreciate all of you for tuning in and just listening. I don't want no thumbs up. I just like for people to take the information that I'm sharing with them and applying it to themselves. Whether you play this back, listen to it over and over again, take notes, because that's what you're supposed to do. Protect yourself. Put yourself in a position where when you walking into these courts, you already know what the game is. You know what your rights are. And just because you stepping into someone's courtroom, your rights do not take a back seat. And on that note, remember, ladies and gentlemen, Uncle Phil loves you. I really do. That would never change. Not even a little bit. All right, y'all. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy your weekend. Stay safe. One love.